Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of our Penguin Random House LibraryCon. We can't believe it's time for another one. We feel like we just finished last summer's, but we're so excited for today. We have so much great information for you today. We have a wonderful author panel. We have a great keynote speaker, and we also have a manga panel from some experts in the field. So I'm Kelly Coyle Corvelli. Welcome back to our LibraryCon. We are so happy you're here. And Miriam, do you want to just say hi real quick?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Welcome to LibraryCon 2023, and thank you for joining us today.
Just a couple housekeeping issues. If you have any problems, put them in the chat. You know, the back end of this is not as easy as it looks. So in between panels, there might just be a minute or two of catching up and bringing the right speakers on the stage. So when that happens, just bear with us. And like we said, if you have any questions for any of the authors during their panel or any of the speakers during their panel, put them in the Q&A. If we get to them, if we can get to your questions, we absolutely will. We will send all of the information in the wrap-up report like we usually do, and all of the sessions will be recorded. So if you miss anything and you have to, go to work or something, boring, you'll be able to go back to the recording after. So we want to just mention that we have this wonderful online resource hub for you for today's event. Miriam just put the link in the chat. That will have all of the information about all the panels, all the bios of the speakers. It will also have these really great collections of graphic novels, science fiction, horror. We have these really fun media tie-in collections for you, everything that we could think of for all the fandoms. So this online resource hub is so adorable. My colleague Charnel Johnson, she created it. It's like a little choose your own adventure, and we hope you will take advantage of all the resources. All right, so enough about me and about our stuff in the back end. We know that you really want to hear from Pierce Brown, so let's go. All right, so I am so excited to introduce today's keynote speaker. We're lucky enough to meet Pierce a long time ago at an ALA. We think it was almost 10 years ago now when Red Rising came out. I should probably just know, but seems like yesterday, but it was probably 10 years ago. So I'm so excited to introduce Pierce. He's going to be in conversation with Trisha Narwani, the VP and editor-in-chief of Del Rey. Pierce Brown is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of the Red Rising series. Pierce's works have been published in 33 languages and 35 territories, and he lives in Los Angeles, which I will tell you guys, mostly everybody in the panel today is a West Coaster, so go easy on them. They all just maybe woke up. So I have my copy of Lightbringer here, and now we're going to hear about it from Pierce and his wonderful editor, Trisha. Thank you. Thanks,
Hey,
guys.
Pierce.
Hey, T.
Hey, thanks for joining us today, fresh from your Lightbringer tour. How was the tour?
You know, I've finally recovered. My brain was mush a little bit afterwards, but it was a wild tour because it's always funny. You create a book in, by yourself, and then you go out there and you've got to have people who are actually reading it, and it's kind of a shocking experience, But that's
Pierce, I've heard a few people enjoy your books.
A few people, yeah. Fortunately, I had a lot of love this tour.
So Pierce, a lot of us are here today because at some point we had a special experience in a library. Do you have a magical memory of a library that you can share with us?
Yeah, funny enough, it was the library when I moved around quite a bit when I was younger, following my mom's work. She was in local broadcasting. And so I was at a new school every couple of years, and the library was always my sanctuary because, as I said before, you can not take your friends with you when you move, but you can take your books. And so each library in any school I went to felt like my refuge. And so I was in the library in, I think it was Iowa at the time. We were living in the Quad Cities, and the librarian there gave me Harry Potter because she'd just gotten back from England. I think I was in 4th grade, and she came back with Harry Potter, the English edition, because it wasn't out in America yet. And I remember reading it in that library in rural Iowa, and a pretty magical place that was created there.
Yeah, librarians are so often the quest giver and the
Oh
wise
yeah.
mentors that
Oh yeah.
set us on our reading journeys.
Yeah, I look at them like it's kind of like Galadriel, right?
Yes.
You come into their glade, and then they give you a magical item to take along with you on the way.
Yes.
I mean, it'd be so fun. Think how
Not
fun it
safe to
is.
go alone. Take
Yeah,
this.
no, right, exactly. Like it's and books can mean so many different things, but it's wild when you're young because when you look at a book, you don't recognize the magic within, and then you open those pages and it can be a sword to give you either it can be like armor for your journey, it can be a sword for your journey, and it's a lot of different things can be between those pages.
Yeah, so you mentioned Harry Potter as being one of those early swords for you.
Yeah.
What are some other books from your childhood that ignited your love of reading?
I mean, I really loved Indian in the Cupboard and Night in the Cupboard. That
Mhm.
series was great. I also got that when I was like probably fourth grade or so.
Mhm.
I heard Choose Your Own Adventure. The Choose Your Own Adventure novels for me were amazing.
Mhm.
And sometimes I'm not gonna lie, I would cheat and I would, peek ahead to page 76 to see if I wanted to turn left or right down the corridor. 'Cause some of those endings are pretty
Mhm.
capricious. I also really loved the Classics Abridged series. There's I think that those were great. It allowed me to read Dickens when I was like 7 years old,
Mhm.
and Count of Monte Cristo, like a lot of the great stories in Western canon. And so those were fun for me. There was also the Hardy Boys, which I read every single one of, and Nancy Drew. And then they had the crossover series. Oh my gosh, I had such a crush on
What a
Nancy Drew.
moment, the ultimate historical crossover, Nancy Drew and
Oh
the
my
Hardy
God,
Boys.
the world stood still. Yeah, especially when Nancy and Frank,
Mhm.
yeah, they were romantic love interests. I was quite happy about that. And Joe, who was kind of the jock one, Nancy wasn't interested in him. She wanted Frank.
That's right. Um, Now I'm imagining a choose your own adventure Red Rising book,
Oh my
which would
God,
be
that would be
crazy.
quite fun. Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
like
We got one more book in this series, Trisha. Let's keep our eye on the
Mhm,
prize.
mhm. But yeah, in a way, you are like choosing your own adventure as a writer as you're creating these books. And what has turned out to be your favorite part of writing? Is it when you get that first amazing elemental spark? Is it later on when you're revising and perfecting? Is it something else altogether?
I love storytelling, but I hate
Mhm.
writing. Writing
Yep.
itself, I think Kurt Vonnegut said it. It's miserable. Your back hurts, and there is no cure for it.
Mhm.
And I often think that the medium is the most difficult part for that, or the translation from
Mm,
what's in my head to the page. So I'd say that initial spark and then those moments of inspiration along the way. I think a lot of fun we have with it is because, I work a bit more collaboratively along the process than I think a lot of writers do.
right.
So what I'll do is I'll call Trisha up, uh, kind of in like a panic state, and say I have this wild idea, and then I rattle off several
Mhm.
different ideas at you about how to solve a situation,
Mhm.
and then seeing that spark from you. I think
Right.
when we find the right idea, that's a really enjoyable experience for me. It's kind of that act of sharing because I've said that
Mhm.
writing books for me is like when I was a kid, my favorite thing to do was build a fort in the forest.
Mhm.
So up to grow up in some rural settings sometimes, sometimes cities, which was a bit harder. But the rural settings, my favorite thing to do was build a fort and then have friends over and then go play in the fort. And the friends who really would believe that it was Minas Tirith or play along or Middle Ages or something, man, those are my people. The ones that didn't, that was a bit more difficult. But books to me and ideas and stories to me are like building a fort in the forest and having people come play in it. And so when I find that idea that sparks with you, it makes me feel like a kid again. And I think you see it. I get this manic tone, my eyes start
Mhm.
twinkling, and we can just run off to Minas Tirith together or wherever. And so for me, it's my favorite parts are that initial spark, and then the completion when you figure out, oh my God, I finally translated that spark into something that actually works logically on page.
Yeah, well,
And
I'm
those
glad
parts,
to be I'm glad to be that friend in the forest who's
uh, yeah, we're
playing
forced.
make believe with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
We
but
should be
yeah,
growing
you're
up
right.
near each other.
I can always tell too when you have an idea that really excites you because you'll rattle off five ideas and I can feel that you're not really into them. You're still searching, and then in the middle of the conversation, it'll hit you like a meteor.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Because a lot of times I'm one of those people that I might not have the idea when we start talking, but somewhere in the middle of me talking, I'll have the idea. I don't know what that is. I think out loud.
Um, yeah, it's a little bit of a Darrow-esque. I will
Yeah.
Darrow my way out of the situation that I got myself into.
To be honest, I really appreciate your patience in putting up with me.
I mean, but that's where the real excitement and the magic comes from. It's from those spontaneous moments. I know you've tried outlining, both very detailed outlines and more high level outlines, and sometimes that doesn't always work for your process.
What I find is really difficult is to create in a vacuum. I
Mhm,
think that with an audience, and even an audience of one, it's easier for me because
mhm,
there's something about your feedback,
mhm.
even your "mhm"s, where I can feel I've not quite hit the Goldilocks spot, as I like to call it. And there's a lot of times I give you a B plus or a B answer, and you're like,
Right.
and I feel that.
Yes.
And then I feel this clown or this court jester need to perform until I get the aha from
Right.
you.
Yeah, and so,
It's
I'm like happy like a child.
Yeah,
Like,
I like
yes.
and so I keep throwing things at you until you're happy like a child. And for
Yeah.
some reason, that really helps me creatively. And
Mhm.
when I'm just sitting there with an outline, it's like, sure, this works, but there's no feedback from the page.
Yeah, I find another thing is that your characters really feel like they're alive. They feel like real
Mm,
people.
thank you.
And sometimes with an outline, it's like you have action figures and you're making them do things. And Darrow does not listen to you.
No, he does not listen to
Darrow
me.
does not listen to you.
No, no, and I think the wonderful thing also about a series, the wonderful thing and a difficult thing,
Mm,
is these characters, the longer and more people that read them, and the longer they're on the page in terms of the books that are out, the more they become held in common trust.
mhm,
And I think when characters are held in common trust, it's a really great. It adds a lot of gravitas to them, a lot of pathos, right?
mhm,
But at the same time, they they have minds of their own in a bit different way.
mhm,
And so
mhm.
me putting them on an outline and just making them do like what I want them to do as action figures is quite dangerous because I can do something in a vacuum that is against the common trust in a way. And so when I get to, figure out an idea with you,
Mhm,
we're talking. I think that it creates
mhm.
um, more truth to the character. Make sure we're not veering off to a left or right because then you can challenge me. I'll be like, is that Darrow? Is that Cassius?
Right.
You and I really enjoy that aspect of it. Yeah, I created these characters, but
Mm,
um, in the same way, I feel like creation is a bit of a godlike term to put on it.
mhm,
I think it's more like you just sometimes, especially when characters held in common trust, you really discover a character
mhm.
because we're borrowing from when we're creating something, we're borrowing from myriad tropes that have existed long before us and standing on the shoulders of giants, innumerable giants, right? Giants on giants on giants. And so you take all those kind of ideas or even feelings and then you build on them. I mean, I've told you before, Darrow and Cassius, one of the most important relationships in the Red Rising series, emotionally comes from The Fox and the Hound, the old Disney
Yes.
movie. And there's just two vivid scenes I remember from childhood, and their relationship for me is trying to tap into those two vivid emotional frequencies. But then Fox and the Hound, where does that come from? Prince and
Mhm,
the Pauper.
mhm.
And where does that come? I don't know. Probably some biblical story. But anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a friendship dynamic that's like throughout all types of stories and myths and also our own lives.
but then you and I
We
get
all have those opposites of attract friendships.
to, but I think it's if I had an editor who was not as engaging as you are, and I couldn't just call, I
Mhm.
find that would be very difficult for me. I know a lot of authors like creating in vacuums, but
Yeah, some
next
authors
year,
have to
yeah,
go in that like cave and disappear for years and come out with the holy tablets.
yeah, the holy tablet, right? Yeah, that's not me. No, I'm kind of down. I'm kind of down like gambling with the people by the fireside. But
So,
yeah, good.
yeah.
No,
I'll say
please.
you mentioned first of all if we'll move to question and answer session really soon. So um our fine librarian friends, please type your answers, type your questions into the chat and we'll answer them. But before we get to the Q&A, one more question. You mentioned standing on the shoulders of giants to create the series. Some of those giants are Greek and Roman. There's a lot of influence from Greek and Roman history and mythology. How did you get interested in the classics?
Gosh, I think it was as a kid. I was given quite a few books about the Trojan War,
Mhm,
in Greek mythology, and certainly I think there's almost something in our genetics to be attracted to it.
mhm,
I've
mhm,
always felt a little suspicious about a monotheism, and in a lot of monotheism, there's this concept that the people are not worthy, um,
Right.
and can never hit the mark. Right? Sin means to err, to miss the mark, and
Mhm,
humans are always sinning. And I feel like there's something very attracted to me in the humanist way of the Greek gods and the Roman gods, particularly, I mean, the Greek gods,
mhm,
uh, and their understanding of it, because the gods being just as flawed as humans, then it's kind of an investigation of humanity. Their gods are an investigation of humanity, whereas some of the other gods I encountered during my childhood were, an indictment of humanity. And I always found it really fascinating to hear the gossip of the gods.
mhm.
Like when I was a kid, like I think also I found like Xena Warrior Princess when I was like 7. So all you apparently need to do to get a 7-year-old boy interested in Greek and Roman myths is, put Lucy Lawless on screen.
Uh-huh. I think she did that for a lot of us. Got us
Oh
interested.
man, I remember the first time I saw my dad. Saw me, because I'd have to wake up really early because it was on like WGN,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I had to wake up really early on Sundays before church. And I remember there was like a love scene between like Ares, the god of war, who wanted like Xena to be his goddess of war. And I'm watching that, and my dad comes in, and my mom was trying to convince him it was an educational show. Then he walks in the sex scene between those two before church, and I was like, and I didn't get to keep watching Xena for years because my dad said, "I don't want you to idolize violence and
Right.
sex." And
But
I'm
yet,
like, oh yeah, and I'm like, oh, the Greeks didn't idolize violence or sex. Maybe
not
they
at
did.
all.
Maybe they did.
And yet, look at where those memories of Xena have gotten you.
My
And
my
yes,
dad dies. My dad dies thinking about that because I was like, it comes from Xena, and you shouldn't have gate kept all those things from me. And he's like, it was a very confusing time. I was trying to make, raising you.
yeah.
Funny, you and I both talk about that a lot. Is those influences when we were kids, um, are very germane to what we do now. And they were looked at as idle distractions, right? They were looked at
Yes.
as distraction from our schoolwork. You got to go do your calculus. And yeah, that didn't help me.
Yeah, but it's often the thing that we're not supposed to be doing as kids, but that we're drawn to from the beginning. It's who we are and who we
Yeah.
end up becoming.
Well, I look at it also this way: like, there's so much competition out there. We're so specialized,
Hmm.
society, especially America.
Hmm.
There's so much competition in everything that you can never put your X factor into something that you don't love.
Right.
So even if you are smart enough to be a great lawyer, there's a lot of people smart enough to be great lawyers. And if you can't actually invest your X factor through love into something, you're never going to really shine or be happy.
Well, I mean, that's right. Only you could have written Red Rising, the specific combination of your personal experience and the Count of Monte Cristo and a memory, a stray memory of Xena and everything that's ever happened to you has become the
But
series.
kind of like you, we could have done a lot of things. I don't
Mhm.
think I'd be really great at a lot of those things. I think I might have had the skill set, but I don't think I would have the follow through.
Yes, I would have been a perfectly fine doctor or lawyer, as my parents would have liked.
I would love to see Dr. Narwani,
Oh God.
pink hair, coming in to give me like
Mad scientist type of doctor, more
surgery on
like.
my appendix. Yeah. You'd be so mad scientist. Oh, that'd be great.
I do want the lab coat. I do want the basement laboratory
We can
and
get you all those
strange
things.
assistant.
We can get you
Uh,
all those things without you having to get a degree.
that is correct.
Yeah.
So we have two questions in the chat. So Pierce,
Yes.
who are your currently active author inspirations?
Oh man, I wouldn't say I'm I wouldn't say that there's anyone active that I'm really drawing inspiration from currently, except for perhaps Bernard Cornwell.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, yeah, no, that's wrong, actually. Not inspirations, but I would say touchstones. So Bernard Cornwell, I read this Richard Sharp series, all like 23, 24 of his books, really loved them. His Saxon Saga, I really enjoyed. Um, and then Tom Holland, who's Rubicon, I found to be one of the best books on the Roman or the fall of the Roman Republic into empire. And
Mm-hmm.
so the funny thing is, it's not really in the fantasy sci-fi space. I feel as though most of my inspirations there are quite dead. Yeah, and I think that there's sometimes I feel really guilty about reading anyone modern because I haven't read all the dead people yet, and it feels like there's it's a problem. Feels like there's so much to read. I did really enjoy This Is How You Lose the Time War. That's the most recent book I read, and I thought that was incredibly well written. And so perhaps on like a page to page level, there's some inspiration there, but I'd say in terms of a story and yarn level and vibe level, Cornwell and Holland, yeah.
So next question, how would you describe your work to someone new to your books? Or alternatively, how should we as librarians describe your books when we're recommending them to patrons?
Gosh, Trisha, can you answer that one?
Oh gosh,
Sci-fi rock opera?
so close. What's that?
Sci-fi rock opera?
Sci-fi rock opera is a great way to put it. Um, I'd say I'm sure there are a lot of people who've just gotten into Dune because of the films. Like this would be a great book for those
It's
fans.
like Dune meets 1984.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard not to give. It's hard when you ask that question not give like an elevator pitch, and the elevator pitch always sounds like a cheesy Hollywood pitch. You know, like Dune meets 1984 meets Harry Potter.
Right.
But like the PG-13 R version.
I
I
think
think what's different about Red Rising is it's an intersection of a lot of different things.
right.
Science fantasy, but it also draws pretty substantially from history. It's one of the things that I think you and I have a lot of fun with, Tricia,
Yes.
is how it's the middle of a Venn diagram of a lot of things we like.
Right.
So science fiction, fantasy, and history and social commentary all find a place in Red Rising.
Yeah.
So, you know, in many ways, it's a story about finding your power, but then also questioning the archetypes of heroes.
Yeah, I remember you saying that a lot of what you do is just take mythic pop culture structures and then make them your own and make them weird. And I love that description. Another next question. How important is it for Darrow to separate his sense of right and wrong versus the Golds? I'm reading the first book, Red Rising, and I have just gotten to Titus's punishment, and I wonder at Darrow's guilt at not being the one to punish him.
I think so. In my books, is a caste-based structure. 14 different colors. At the top are the golds, at the bottom are the reds. The story follows a red named Darrow, a manual laborer who has to infiltrate the golds in order to bring down their society from the inside. To do so, he has to pretend like he's a gold. And so I think what's interesting about Darrow is that he is always at war with himself. Golds are not at war with themselves. And so they don't really have to question their morality the same way. But I would say that war going on inside Darrow when he's having to do things to be efficient, when he's having to do things to get the task done. Unlike Golds, he's constantly, there's shearing forces going on inside him. And I think those shearing forces are what make him a hero, because his actions actually make him quite villainous a lot of times. The shearing forces are the point of the story. So your question is incredibly on point, because it is the entire point of the story is him questioning the morality of what he's doing. And throughout the entire series, because you'll see Darrow go to extremely dark places, particularly when he starts befriending people that he's supposed to be bringing down. And I think that the story resonates for me because it follows kind of like that question in my own life, and I think in a lot of our lives, of yeah, to get something done, I can do that. I have to compromise what I believe in, or I at least like walk on the edge of darkness. And how deep can you walk into darkness without losing yourself? And can you jump headlong into darkness and then come back to yourself?
Right.
So that's the central question in Red Rising.
Okay, last question. Do you prefer reading books or listening to audiobooks?
Reading.
And would you prefer fans read or listen to your work?
I prefer they do whatever form works best for them.
Mhm.
I find that with reading, I'm a very visual person, and I find with reading,
Mhm.
there's nothing that beats it. Not a film, not someone telling me a story.
Mhm.
I am then I am then the act. Then my brain, in my brain contains the multitude of the directors, the actors, the editing, the soundtrack, all of it. When put it like this,
Mhm.
when you're reading a book, the only filter is your brain. Between the story that the author has for you and you. Just your brain is a filter. When you're listening to a book, the filter is then the narrator,
Mhm.
the editor, the sound quality. There's a lot more filters to go through that don't come from the author. So, as an author, I would say I would prefer you to read it, but really, I want you to do whatever works best for you to get the
Mhm.
story. Because a lot of times we don't have time to read. Just look at the book. And I don't think a lot of people have long commutes in our world. So do what
Mhm.
you want to do. That said, the egomaniac wants you to just read it.
Yes. And also Tim Gerard Reynolds is an
Uh,
incredible
yeah.
narrator.
He's an incredible narrator and I think often can bring a new like how do I say it? A new life to the story that
Yes.
perhaps particularly he does it with this incredible Irish accent and has like a lot of different accents for the characters, so it can breathe new life into it. So it all
Mhm.
depends on what you like. I mean, I listened to the box set of the Hobbit, and
Mhm.
it created a tone and like this majestic beautiful tone in my head that I adored. And if I just read The Hobbit, which I eventually did, if I just read The Hobbit, maybe I wouldn't have had that same magic. So whatever works, as long as you're not just waiting for the TV show or film. Yeah.
So Iris in the chat asks, why did you choose to give the main characters British accents instead of American accents? I assume this is referring to the audio
Oh, the
version.
audio. I mean, the audio. The Reds were inspired by the Irish migrant working class in the 1800s
Mhm.
America, and
Mhm.
it felt culturally very interesting to me. And Brits make so then for the other accents, it made more sense for it to be Commonwealth accents. And I thought Brits always made better imperialists than Americans, at least because I just
For the
imagine.
class dimensions,
Oh
yes.
yeah, and there's nothing like Michael Caine atop a camel, in his helmet, sipping tea, being ha ha ha. And so there's something completely like, sometimes the archetype is hilarious. Like Brits, archetypally make better villains than Americans, in my opinion. But that's my cultural bias probably. And the thing is, Tim does a lot of different accents. Like I think I asked him to do for the Far Rim, which is like the gas giants, people that live out there. I wanted him to do a kind of a South African accent, and he did a great job on that. So I think you just have to sometimes choose which direction you're going to go. And I don't think like Darrow having like a Southern accent in a sci-fi fantasy setting would like be particularly interesting. Like, what if he sounded he's from Louisiana? I think that might be a little weird. Like, for a long time, the audiobook listeners thought his name was Daryl, not Darrow. So they're like Daryl, but they're like, what is he? Yeah, he's like, why does he have an Irish accent? His name's Daryl.
Mhm.
Though I do love that version of Red Rising. Like, imagine it was all done with a Southern twang.
Now I'm gonna imagine an
Oh,
alternate
lived in
world.
peace, but my enemies brought me war.
Red Rising that's in New Orleans and
Yeah.
Louisiana. Well, I think we're just about out of time, but thank you, Pierce. It was awesome as always to talk to
Yeah,
you.
it's so fun
And
rambling with you.
yes, and thank you, librarians, for joining us. It's been great.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
thank you, Trisha Pierce. That was awesome. Any last thoughts? We don't want to rush you off, but we really appreciate your time.
No, just want to say thanks for having me. It was a fun experience. Gosh, it was 10 years ago now that we think about it.
I know.
ALA, it was like it was very funny to me because throughout when I would tell teachers when I was younger that I wanted to be a writer, and they kind of like chuckled. In fact, some outright laughed. librarians were always into it, though. They were probably the most supportive about wanting me to be a writer, because they never thought about how unlikely it was. They were all just rooting for me. And I think it's a very special class of individual here. It's like in a Dungeons and Dragons party, this is like the healers and the druids, you know? And so I think it's a very cool thing that you all do. And thank you for listening to Trisha and I ramble and talk about our book.
No, that was fun. And you're right. Librarians have been fans since the beginning. We've been going on this journey. The Red Rising journey with you has been so fun. Even though we're all getting older, it's still fun.
It's very strange. My face is doing funny things, you know?
We don't like talking about how much time goes by, but
No.
thank you both so much. This was so fun. And I'll put you on the spot. Pierce, he did say before in the practice session that we should ask him to do more stuff. So
Yeah.
we will.
Should do more stuff. Well, I mean, Random House is they were protective of me, I think, because they're like, finish the damn book, Pierce. But finish that last
well, that's
one.
true.
So,
We don't
yeah,
want to distract you too much,
No,
but
not
if
too
there's
much.
something good, we will reach out, definitely.
Well, this kind of
Thank
stuff is
you.
a lot of fun. So thank you, and hope you guys have a great webinar.
Yes, and we also are giving away t-shirts, Howler t-shirts as a raffle prize.
Are
So
you?
librarians, make sure you go in and enter to win some t-shirts for your patrons. Yeah. All right. Have a great day. Thank you so much, both of you. Very, very much.
See you guys later. Bye.
Bye. Take care. All right. Like I just said, we are putting in the chat again the resource hub that we created for today. There's a raffle in there where you can win some Howler Red Rising t-shirts for your patrons at the library. And so we hope you will enter that. All right, next up, we have a panel of manga experts for you. We have a big panel of experts in this field. I'm not sure if they're going to give you a great presentation that's going to include a lot of information, but I'm not sure if there's going to be time for Q&A at the end or not, but please feel free to put your questions in the chat. If we don't get to them now, we can get to them after. But in the meantime, we told them to answer as many questions as possible because then we don't have to answer them. And then again, like we said in the resource hub, there's lots of collection lists for manga titles for your shelves. So while we're getting everybody on stage, I am going to introduce the moderator of this panel, Ben Applegate. He is the Director of Publisher Services for the Kodansha Print Manga Program. He is the person I ask all of my manga questions to, and I am hoping that he will be able to answer yours today.
Thank you so much, Kelly. This is a great honor to be here and speak with all of you. And I don't know how we're going to follow Pierce Brown. I'm a huge fan of Red Rising, but I will follow up on something he said about librarians being the most supportive people. I mean, the same is true for manga. I think all along, librarians have been the #1 promoters and supporters of manga for all readers of all ages. And so we're very excited to be here to talk about it with you. And like Kelly said, please do throw your questions into the chat and we'll do our best to get to them. I think we're going to have to go even faster than we thought we would. So please pardon our speed if we speed through some of these slides before you have a chance to look at them. I think we will be sending out this presentation afterwards as a PDF, so don't worry, you'll have plenty of time to review it at your leisure. But I want to jump straight in and start by introducing my fellow panelists who are here in alphabetical order. TJ, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ben. Hi, everyone. My name is TJ Ferrantini. My pronouns are they, them, or he, him. And I'm an editor at Kodansha Comics. And several titles that I've edited include the Attack on Titan Omnibus Edition, Chobit's 20th Anniversary Edition, Boys Run the Riot, and My Summer Review, amongst others. And great to be here today.
Thank you for joining us. Carl, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning. My name is Carl Horn. I'm a senior editor here, specializing in Japanese books, manga, and art books at Dark Horse Comics. Some of the titles I've edited are Satoshi Kon's Opus, the Kurosaki Corpse Delivery Service, Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken, and I'm very excited to have the chance to participate in today's event.
Thank you. Vanessa.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Vanessa Tenazis. I am the Associate Director of Editorial for Kodansha Comics. Some of the titles that I've edited in the past have been Sailor Moon and Wotakoi Love is Hard for Otaku. And I'm very excited to be here with you all today. Thank you.
And joining us all the way from Taiwan, we've got Andrew and Christopher.
Hi, folks. I'm Andrew Woodrow Butcher. I'm a recent addition to the Kodansha team, helping out with some marketing to exactly you, helping them connect with librarians and educators. And I've come into this role with a background in kind of exactly that. I've spent a career talking about books with librarians, mostly comics and manga. So that's why I'm here today. It's great to be here. Thanks.
I'm Christopher. I've been working in and around the manga industry for a little while now, and currently running a podcast about manga in addition to working on the library marketing with Kodansha, a new initiative where we're going to be reaching out more to public librarians, school librarians, and special collections librarians to help make it easier for you to stock manga, to know what to get and why. Happy to be here.
And thank you. I know that's a 12-hour time difference in where you are, so thanks for staying up late with us. And thank you to Carl and to so many of you for getting up early with us today. We wanted to start the presentation by talking about some overall trends in the manga market in 2023. These aren't necessary. This is not an exhaustive list, but we just picked 3 things that we felt it was important to call out. First of all, and the one that I'm sure a lot of you have been talking with your patrons about, is the broadening of the category. Vanessa, do you want to talk us through this part?
Sure. So manga as a term and as a category has always referred to in the past, specifically comics originating from Japan. But in recent years, the non-Western graphic novel / comic category has rapidly expanded to include other territories putting out content. So for example, on this slide, we're looking at a webcomic originally created for vertical scrolling on your phone that originated from Korea and has since been licensed into Japan and also in the United States. And these kinds of platforms have just made it a lot more accessible to Western audiences to view and enjoy non-Western content. And that's been like a nice entry point for people into manga and other similar categories. And then in addition to different territories publishing content, we also have different types of authors publishing this kind of content. So featured on this slide, we have Kingdom of Quartz on the bottom left there, which is actually a Canadian author publishing a Japanese manga in Japan. And then we also have on the top right corner there, work by a Nigerian author. And then Beyond the Clouds there on the bottom is actually work by a French author being published in Japanese. So really, manga is not just Japanese comics anymore by Japanese authors. Like we're really seeing like a big expansion in the market in terms of, you know, origin countries, and then also different types of authors getting into the space as well. So lots of different experiences to be had and enjoyed by readers.
And the other angle on the broadening of the category, of course, beyond origin is genre, and in particular, LGBTQIA plus manga has never been broader in its availability in English. TJ, do you want to take us through a little bit about that? And Christopher, I think, as well.
Yeah, sure. So not only has manga itself really been booming in recent years, but especially LGBTQ plus manga. And this really started several years ago and started gaining popularity with a lot of the single volume, more memoir type manga, such as the My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness series by Nagata Kabi. But now this is really expanding towards across all other genres, and we're seeing a lot more BL, so boys love manga, Yuri, which is girls love manga, and in general, a lot of manga with like LGBTQ plus characters such as transgender or intersex characters. And this has also been really exciting in recent years because, for example, with titles such as Boys Run the Riot or Is Love the Answer, those visuals of like queerness are brought to the forefront and can really easily be seen by readers in the covers, such as the asexual flag representation on Is Love the Answer, or Boys Run the Riot, which was not only written by a transgender manga artist and features a transgender main character, but was also completely localized by an all transgender localization team. And now it especially with, banned books being, an issue across the United States, with LGBTQ plus youth being targeted, it's definitely more important than ever that LGBTQIA, kids and library patrons have access to these kinds of books. And Christopher, I don't know if you would like to speak more to that.
It's really important, yeah, to have that kind of material in libraries. It was the kind of thing that saved me growing up, actually, having access to libraries and having access to queer material that I wasn't seeing necessarily at the stores or was too embarrassed to buy in stores. I think one of the things that we're doing really well at Kodansha as well is having material available at different age ranges as well. So different levels of comfort in different libraries with what's portrayed on the page are represented. Everything from something maybe as soft as like a Scholastic Heartstoppers, which I think is a book that most people are familiar with now, to something that's a more sort of gritty adult take on relationships in the queer community. We've got it all, and there's more coming every day. Yeah, I will also say that although we're talking mostly about physical books today, most of our material is available digitally on Overdrive. So if you are in an area where it's difficult to have these books on the shelves due to, let's say, community concern, these are books that can be available digitally. And a lot of young people are getting digital library cards, and they're going to be back able to access this material without necessarily it showing up in a way that's going to act as a flashpoint or a trigger for parents or gatekeepers. So there's a lot of opportunity here, I think, with the titles that we're publishing in the LGBTQ space.
Absolutely. The third trend we wanted to highlight is reissues of classic manga. So at the other end of the spectrum from the $10.99, $12.99 hardcovers, paperbacks, excuse me, are these beautiful hardcover editions, which Carl has been a huge proponent of. Carl, do you want to walk us through this part?
Hi. So thus far this year, I've done Dark Horse manga presentations at 6 anime cons throughout the United States. And one of the most important reasons for these panels is actually to listen rather than to talk, because this is a chance, of course, to meet the readers and the people who are actually experiencing the books. And I'm learning a lot about people's diverse viewpoints towards manga. So the inexpensive paperback tankobon, which began at the beginning of the century being sold for $9.99 and now often costs a bit more, we're all familiar with it, and it played a tremendous role in popularizing manga as a format in the United States. However, there is a flip side to it, and this is in the diverse readership. So many comics fans, apparently, that is, people who read American comic books regularly, have been reluctant to get into manga. Not because of stories necessarily, not because of art styles necessarily, but because of format. Dark Horse, of course, is Dark Horse Comics, and we publish a great many American comics. And those of you who have American comics graphic novels in your collections and holdings will know that, generally speaking, American comics don't shrink down the size of the art when they do a graphic novel. It's the same size as the original comic book. And it's generally printed on slicker, higher quality paper, and not the rougher paper you see on manga. Now, what happens, however, when we do a deluxe edition, suddenly this is a manga at the same size as an American comic book. It's a presentation of a high-end American graphic novel. The paper quality is high-end. So suddenly people who were reluctant to get into manga for no other reason than format are getting into manga, and they're discovering that they like it. So I always feel that we have to find reasons for more people to read, more people to discover these things. And sometimes it's not the story, and sometimes it's not the art. It can also be format. It can also be presentation. So if we offer more ways and more entry points, it helps to deal with our long-term challenge, which is always to get more people into this incredibly diverse and exciting field. North America is such a huge readership. I have to believe that there are many more people we can reach who would like manga who aren't reading it yet. So this is just one way to do it.
Absolutely. And like you said, the flip side of bringing in young readers is also keeping people reading manga or getting adults into manga.
Yes, exactly.
And I think we've had a lot more success in the past couple of years keeping people reading manga out of their teenage years into their 20s and even, their ancient 30s or whatever.
Exactly.
But we've seen stuff like Otakoi, and stuff like Princess Jellyfish, series that focus on 20-something characters, actual adults, for heaven's sake, finally find readership, which we had been having trouble with before. The other concern,
I want to see diversity of age
Yeah.
as well as other kinds of diversity.
Absolutely. The other aspect of this is just shelf space, and we know that's a big concern for all of you, getting some of these series on shelves in fewer books and taking up less space. Kodansha, I just want to call out a few of the omnibus editions that Kodansha has been publishing lately, reissues, and show you a few upcoming ones. The big one on this slide, of course, being Initial D, which is getting a brand new translation and lettering, brand new edition next year. That's the classic manga that directly inspired Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift and became a racing manga legend. So all the fans of that are very, very excited that that is coming back. That's one to keep an eye on. Heading into, we're going to just talk about some upcoming titles now and let you know what we've got coming up from Dark Horse and Kodansha. We're going to go through these really, really fast, but Carl, do you want to get us started with one of my faves?
Okay, Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken. This is the manga that inspired the anime show of the same name. New York Times picked as one of the best TV shows of 2020, putting on the same list as Better Call Saul. So it's about a group of young women. They're attending a mysterious high school called Shibahama High. There's already an anime club on campus, but they don't want to just watch anime. They want to make it. So this manga expresses visually their creative and world-building ideas. They talk them out and debate them. It's a story about different kinds of personalities who come together and learn to work together to build something. So the anime only adapts the first 3 volumes. The manga is up to volume 8 in Japan. So it's like getting a whole new season of the anime. So Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken is inspired in part by the real school experiences of the manga's creator, Sumito Owada. He had students in his Japanese school of different ethnicities, different colors, different religious backgrounds, all Japanese. So Japan is already a more diverse place than a lot of people realize, and this is a manga that reflects that reality. So that's Eizouken. The Shadow over Innsmouth. This is a direct adaptation of the original 1931 story by H.P. Lovecraft. It's about a young college student who's taking a trip through some historical sites in New England. When he's in Newburyport, he finds out there's apparently this isolated fishing town on the North Shore called Innsmouth. It has a bad reputation. Nobody goes there if they can help it. This is a horror story, so of course he goes straight there and finds out more about his own history than he bargained for. This manga is drawn and adapted by Go Tanabe, whose last Lovecraft adaptation, At the Mountains of Madness, was nominated for both of the comics industry's top awards, the Eisner and the Harvey. People who are fans of Junji Ito and would like to check out more great manga horror, this is a title for them. As a matter of fact, Junji Ito has said the reason he doesn't adapt H.P. Lovecraft is he thinks that he wouldn't do as good a job of it as Go Tanabe does. Innocent, it's based on a true story that's fairly well known in France. It's the legendary Sanson family, who for generations were the official executioners of both the French royal and later the Republican governments. Our protagonist, Charles-Henri Sanson, he was literally the man on the edge of 2 eras. He carried out executions for King Louis XVI, but in 1793, he was the same man who cut off Louis XVI's head. This is an epic story drawn in a beautiful, Baroque, and passionate way. It's depicting all the contradictions of a time when scientific enlightenment and medieval privilege walked hand in hand. It was a 9-volume series in Japan. Dark Horse is collecting it in 3 omnibus volumes. It's written and drawn by Shinichi Sakamoto, and I believe we are the first publisher to announce his creator's works in English. When I first saw Innocent, all I could think was, why did it take so long to publish Sakamoto? So I'm very happy that we're doing it.
Thanks a lot, Carl. I think up next is Andrew.
And I want to tell you all about Miraculous Tales of Ladybug and Cat Noir. So I think many of you are familiar with this property already, and I can tell you that many of the kids who come to your library are familiar with this property already. And that's really the big thing that you need to know here. There are a bunch of entry points here. First of all, it's a magical girl, like superheroic adventure story set in Paris. Who doesn't want that? But also people are watching it streaming on Disney. And that's a big hook. We know that drives circulation of manga. It's also legit a kid's title. And I think that we all want there to be more manga for kids, built for kids, to have in our collections. We know kids are hungry for it, and therefore we're hungry for it. Well, here it is. This is out right now. The next one's coming, I think, in the spring, volume 2. Maybe even
Just coming this fall.
Oh, there you go. Great.
The only other thing I'll mention here is that this is actually taking off hugely at, of all places, Walmart. We have sold through 3,500 copies of this manga in the past 3 weeks at Walmart stores across the country. So there's a lot of hunger for this among the target demo. Yep.
So get in on the ground floor. Witch Hat Atelier Kitchen. I'm sure so many of you have Witch Hat Atelier, the main series, in your collections already. It's a great series. It's beautifully drawn. It has a really, really wide appeal already. This has that built-in audience for you. So you can start the spin-off series, but also it's food manga. Food manga is a growing category. There's more and more interest. And this has real recipes that you can go and make. You can make the croquettes. You can, so again, this is a series with multiple entry points. I think it's going to be a hit for your installed fan base of Witch Hat Atelier already, but you can have that extra hook for people who are foodies, manga foodies.
I will mention the rating on here should be teen 13 plus.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Yeah.
It's a recipe that has rum in it. We're trying to be really careful about that. So there's like a cocktail in it at the very, very end that we offer a non-alcoholic version of. We're trying to be very conscientious about that kind of thing. But aside from that part, is very much an all ages manga.
And the Darwin incident. This is coming in a week and a half. It's going to be landing. So this is about a teen who is a chimpanzee human who was created in a lab, and who is on the run. So it's sort of a wacky premise. It's got an adventure feel to it, but it also has questions about the ethics of veganism or how we relate to animals as a species. These kinds of bigger questions alongside the sort of wacky romp premise. I think it's going to have a really big appeal. It's for older teens, and honestly, I think adults are also going to love it. And there's sort of a built-in metaphor there of sort of the teenager as wild animal that I think is going to be a hook for a lot of people. Also, interestingly, it's a manga set in America, which is a rarity. So I think this has, again, many entry points. There's lots of ways to talk about this with your readers and your patrons. So check out the Darwin incident.
Yeah, this has won a ton of awards, and it's not just set in America. It's like a very accurate and detailed depiction of America. I think this is a perfect book club manga, Andrew. I think you're absolutely right. Up next, Vanessa, and I'm going to ask you to keep it real fast.
Don't worry, key points only. So I'll be talking to you about 3 titles. The first one here is Ogami-san Can't Keep It In. This is actually kind of part of the broad high school category that a lot of manga tend to depict. I think the key factor for this one is the boy pictured on the cover. He has this weird physical quirk that when you touch him, the person touching him speaks their true thoughts accidentally, like they have no control over it. And unfortunately, the girl on the cover has a really kind of dirty mind, as high schoolers do. So a lot of things just come spilling out of her mouth. And it's a really cute, awkward love story, coming of age story. And I think not only people going through puberty will enjoy it, but I think people who have already gone through it and want to remember those cringy moments will just feel that nostalgia immediately.
Those moments we would rather forget.
Yes, exactly. And continuing on that nostalgia train, the next title is My Lovesick Life as a 90s Otaku. For people who may have been into anime in its early days in the 90s, you'll notice a lot of big references in this title. This is really reaching out to people who got into anime and manga when it was really small and is now exploding. And they'll feel a lot of attachment to characters that they used to know and love. And also this really just adorable love story that, is kind of a flashback from a future point of view. So. And then finally, tying the knot with an Amagami sister. As you can see, we have a lot of cute girls on the cover. This is another big genre in manga, where basically we have a male protagonist, a bunch of cute girls. What's gonna happen? No one knows, and that's kind of part of the appeal, is kind of finding a girl you want to root for. And the added appeal here is that it's set in a traditional Japanese shrine, so you're kind of getting that cultural element to it, that I think a lot of manga fans are really interested in learning more about. So, thanks, Ben.
Thanks, TJ. Hop in.
Right. Now I'll be speed running through the next three titles. So I Can't Say No to the Lonely Girl is a new Yuri series that we'll be coming out with. Yuri readers are just so incredibly passionate about seeing more series get localized in English, and this is a great addition to our Yuri catalog. It is about a kind of a shy girl in high school whose teacher asks her to try to get a delinquent student to start kind of coming back to class, and the hijinks that ensue as the two of them become closer together. So if you're also a fan of shoujo manga or josei manga and the typical romance tropes that you see in that, that is a delight that you'll see plenty in this series as well. So The Summer with You, the sequel. So My Summer with You has been a incredibly sweet BL series. It's actually Kodansha's second highest selling romance manga series, about two boys, Chiharu and Wataru, who start off as friends over their shared love of movies, and how their relationship changes from becoming friends to becoming boyfriends. And this is kind of their third summer together now that they are in college and they're both turning 20. So it's an incredibly sweet romance series. And although it is a sequel, it is another series that can kind of be picked up very easily and, dive right in. So this will definitely appeal to folks who have read the previous volumes in this series, but it can also stand alone on its own as well. And Medalist, I am so incredibly excited about this title. This is actually done very well in digital, and we're very excited to see it coming out in print. It is about an older 20-something figure skater who he retires from figure skating, but he finds himself getting back into figure skating by way of becoming a coach. And he sees potential in this young girl. So it's about how the story of how not only he revitalizes his love for the sport by becoming her coach, but how she also comes into her own, honing her skills as a figure skater and how she gets into it. So this is a perfect all ages manga, that appears to readers young and old alike. Whether you're a fan of figure skating or whether you just love seeing folks be passionate about, what they want to pursue and achieve. This is such an incredibly sweet, inspiring manga. It's another one I'm really looking forward to.
I'm really looking forward to getting this one out in print as well. And just something I want to call out about this title. It's pretty subtle. It's not called out specifically. There's definitely no diagnosis or anything like that. But the main female character, she does seem to have some sort of she has a lot of trouble in school and may have some sort of learning difference. And so I think that's a really interesting element of the story, is that she only really feels that she's found her joy on the ice. And it's about her and this coach she meets, her building a place for her to feel joy and come into her own and value her accomplishments. And I think that's a really special part of the story.
Deb said the art was awesome on that one. And the art's awesome on Nina and the Starry Bride as well. This is a shoujo fantasy romance series that your fans of shoujo manga are going to love. Your fantasy fans are going to love. If you've got Yona of the Dawn, Snow with the Red Hair, Ancient Max's Bride of the Library already, this is perfect for them. The artwork is gorgeous. And this was another one that did so well for us in digital that we just had to put it into print. So you can look for that in October. It's sort of an older teen shoujo romance due to some intense situations, but nothing too worrisome, I would say, for most collections. Next up, this one is worrisome for most collections. We're going to put this firmly in the S.E. Heaton Outsiders, Charles Burns Black Hole, and the darkest possible moments in the Breakfast Club with no happiness at the ending. This is what we like to call an adult literary manga about people in their teens. And the right teens are going to find it and see themselves reflected in it. And it's going to be huge. River's Edge, Kyoko Okazaki. It's a tremendously powerful, important, and disturbing, honestly, book, but really, really good. We don't often put a lot of stuff forward that we would say this is literature. This is literature. River's Edge. but put it in your adult collection. The kids will find it if they need to. Finally, Magic Knight Rayearth is one of the OG Magical Girl manga. If you've got Sailor Moon in your library, you should have this one as well. Fans of She-Ra Miraculous and Sailor Moon, yeah, absolutely. And this actually features the sort of refreshed translation and sound effects that we did for the 25th anniversary, like big hardcover box. But now it's in softcover, so it's a little bit more affordable to put in your libraries. And yeah, I love Magic Knight Rayearth going all the way back to the 90s. It was funny, Magic Knight Rayearth was on the cover of the 90s otaku manga that we were looking at earlier. So yeah, this is a really important series. I'm glad that we have it back in print.
Yeah, if you were to ask me who I think the most underrated mangaka of major significance is in the US, I would answer Kyoko Okazaki probably. So seconding everything Christopher said about River's Edge. If anyone read Helter Skelter or Pink, I mean, they're amazing works. So we're already over time, but if there are any additional questions, we would love to answer them. This is really an all-star crew of, probably dozens of years of combined manga experience on here. And thanks, Deb Aoki, for the assist in the chat and finding the age rating. Are the age ratings on the back covers adjusted to US audiences? Yes, Joanna, the age ratings on the backs of our books are created for US audiences by many of the people on this call. Manga does not get age ratings when it's released in Japan unless it is explicitly pornographic. So we are doing the best we can to sometimes fit a round peg into a square hole and come up with a good age rating. It's a difficult process and it's not perfect. But that's why we want to do our best to offer you all the information you need to find a place for these books in your collection. And if anybody is interested in getting additional resources, please feel free to email Christopher and Andrew. Do you want to give your...
Yeah, we're libraries at kodansha.usa.com. And I'll pop it in the chat real quick, but we actually also just started up a librarian web page on the Kodansha site that should hopefully be linked very soon. We're just putting it together now, actually, as we speak. So, but yeah, we are going to be available to answer your questions about these kinds of books, about manga in school and public libraries. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Join our newsletter. We're going to be starting a newsletter any moment now. There we go. That's our page right there in the chat, kodansha.us/librarians. Andrew, anything you wanted to add?
No, I think that's it. But we really do mean it. Please reach out, and your question can be like, how gory is this? Or whatever you need to know to see if it fits into your selection parameters. Like, I want to hear these questions, and I will get back to you with answers as helpfully as I possibly can. So please, 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 just be in touch for anything.
Yeah, we know everyone is walking a tightrope these days. We're trying to take into account violence, themes, sexual content, all of these things when coming up with our age ratings. But if there's any additional specifics you need, don't hesitate to reach out. And Gloriana, I think in the chat farther up, said that they were trying to start a manga club. And if anyone out there is trying to do that or needs help investing in the category, do not, again, another great reason to get in touch with us. You can get in touch with Kelly's team, and they'll also hook you up with the folks at the other manga publishers that PRHPS represents. Carl, do you want to add anything here for the Dark Horse side?
No, other than that, I've spoken to a number of manga clubs and in manga presentations at libraries in the Portland, Oregon area, and that's something I always like to do. My very first job out of college was being a librarian. And so from personal experience, I've seen of how important libraries are, to manga and graphic novel, the reader expansion, and just the accessibility, which really wasn't there when I was a kid. Librarians have just done such a wonderful job to make this culture available to everybody. And I always thought that more important than people reading is people enjoying reading. It's more important, I think, for people to think of reading as something they enjoy. Unfortunately, sometimes reading is taught as a chore or something for an assignment or something to pass a test. And therefore, people don't associate reading with personal pleasure, with personal enjoyment. But if people find something they enjoy reading, in some cases that may be a manga and it may be a graphic novel, then they have the habit of getting into reading itself, and then they'll, read on their own and discover so many other things. And so that's, I think, one of the most important things about manga and graphic novels, simply the fact that they are such great reading experiences and open people to the joy of reading, which is, I think, is fundamental.
See, I knew you would put the perfect tag on this. Thank you so much to all of the panelists for joining, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. As I said, we'll be making this presentation available as a PDF if you want to go back and review. And I've posted my email address in the chat. We've posted the library's address in the chat. Don't hesitate to reach out anytime, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you all so much for that wonderful panel. And yes, we like to remind everybody that they don't have to write everything down as they're saying it. All of their contact information, the sign up for the Kodansha newsletter, the library page, we'll put all that in the wrap-up report, so you don't have to remember anything, because it's hard to remember things and enjoy things at the same time. So we will send all this information to you. And also, in general, if you have any questions, you can just email us at library@penguinrandomhouse.com. All right, so one more reminder in the chat is our online hub with all of the information about today's panelists and program and title lists. There's other manga lists in there as well, and some highlights and some media tie-in manga, all sorts of fun stuff. So this has been so fun so far. So we like to, we will end on, we have one more panel for you with authors, and then Miriam and I will just come back on and give you a little bit more information. And we can't thank you enough for joining us today. We have a great author panel for you today. We have 4 authors, and while Charnel is getting them ready on the back end, I will just let you know that they're 4 very different graphic novels, and the point being that there really is a graphic novel for everyone. The authors will come on, they'll talk about their book, and they will have about 5 to 6 minutes each to talk about their titles, and then we'll ask them a question at the end. But if anybody does have a question for any of the authors while they're talking, you can put them in the chat and we will make sure that they see them. So our first author up is going to be Dennis Messner, and my colleague Miriam is going to introduce him. So please sit back and relax and enjoy our author panel. And again, just let us know if you have any questions. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Graphic Novels for All Fandoms session. I'm honored to introduce our first panelist. Raised in rural Missouri, where he learned such important skills as drawing, singing, and how to field dress a deer, Dennis Messner has created, written, and storyboarded animated projects for Disney, Cartoon Network, DreamWorks, and Nickelodeon, as well as illustrated a series of children's books. Here today to talk about his first solo middle grade adventure story, The Unpetables, a graphic novel published by Top Shelf Productions. Please welcome Dennis Messner.
Hi, thank you for that. Hello, my book is, as she mentioned, The Unpetables, which is a middle grade graphic novel, and it's about a pot-bellied pig and an iguana who were sick and tired of being petted, so of course they just went ahead and declared independence and broke out of their petting zoo. So it's that old yarn, right? It's stop me if you've heard this one. Anyhow, Pigman, Ignatius Pigman, and Lizardo Van Buren Van Halen have now started The Unpetables, which is just their very own freelance pet business, and one in which they have one very big rule, which is absolutely positively no petting ever. So while these 2 best friends are out and stirring up new pet business, they're also being relentlessly pursued by a ruthless and very detail-oriented maintenance man who is named, of course, as all maintenance men are named, Maintenance Man Kinney. One big conceit that you might see on the screen there is that the whole book is being narrated by the pig, who is our kind of Pigman, is our kind of wimpy yet very convinced of his own genius pig protagonist narrator. And throughout the book, he kind of refers to himself as a child pig prodigy. And and he's writing, like the picture, he's writing the whole thing on used paper plates that he took from the petting zoo that he calls his paper plate diaries, because of course, why wouldn't he? And still, as much as he'll never wants to admit it, Pigman is kind of nothing without his little brother-like little sidekick, Lizardo, the little lizard, who's loyal, impulsive, nearsighted. What else? Has a skin shedding problem. So I should mention that one of the big creative impetus behind this book was me just trying to tap into like a little bit of a big brother, little brother dynamic that was just a tiny bit reminiscent of what I had with my own real life little brother. As a kid, as you might imagine, I was always into drawing cartoons, making little comics, all that stuff, making up stories. And my mom made the huge mistake of telling me I was a genius, which of course went straight to my head, like the pig. And so also from my earliest memories, I always felt like adults were talking down to me and my little brother. So really it was just a tiny little hop and a skip over to know-it-all pig. I was a little bit chubby too, and weird high energy lizard sidekick who they just kind of wanted people to stop petting and talking to them in baby talk. So from the start, I kind of always thought about this as like an Odyssey like road trip that they went on over a series of books that's kind of like The Fugitive makes plane, trains, and automobiles in the silliest possible way. One thing I do want to mention is like in the book, there's a part where Pigman declares independence from his petting zoo by putting a paper plate Declaration of Independence on the maintenance man's tool shed, which was sort of very directly inspired by something that happened to me in the 7th grade. Without naming names, Mrs. Rasmussen was our very kind and funny homeroom teacher, and she was just suddenly and inexplicably replaced by a kind of uptight and fussy Mrs. Husher. And since we were studying at the time the American Revolution, I thought it would be maybe a good idea just to go ahead and draw a replica of the Declaration of Independence and then change all the wordings and then maybe just go ahead and declare independence from Miss Hosher. And so I passed it around. All the kids signed it. I put my John Hancock where John Hancock had his John Hancock, did the swirly swirly, and taped it to Mrs. Hosher's desk, which immediately earned me like 3 days of detention / solitary confinement in an upstairs schoolroom, which I'm pretty sure was illegal. The postscript of this is kind of like, I was just getting DMs just the other week where somebody like from my old classmates who were like, that part where the pig, I ordered the Unpetables and that part where the pig puts the independence on the door, that's Miss Husher, right? And so I was like, of course, yes. Why, how could it not be? But lastly, as far as audience goes, about this book, I was from the very first page, I was always kind of hyper aware that I wanted to make something that for kids that kind of felt like I felt when I was in those middle grade years, which basically, if you haven't figured that out now, is like a oddball or a misfit. In the book, I think the pig calls them wimps and weirdos, but I would also throw in like reluctant readers or anybody really who feels like they are craving independence, which goes back to Miss Husher and all of that. My agent likes to call me her stunted 12-year-old, so hopefully it feels like maybe I'm writing to them. I don't know. So basically, in the end, the whole thing's about friendship and being true to yourself, whether you're a pig or a lizard. And so that's pretty much it. Thank you for listening to my ramblings.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Just wondering if there are other adventures in store for Pigman and Lizardo.
Yeah, there is already in the can a book 2 where they go to what they call Big City, which is basically like a knockoff of New York City, obviously, and they have all kinds of they have some crazy, it gets kind of crazy over there. And so yeah, and then I just started roughing out a new one where it takes place on a boat, on a tuna boat. So they end up in the Atlantic. So it's basically the third leg of the road trip, the giant road trip to nowhere.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. We're excited about the Unpetables.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you,
having
Dennis. That was fun. I remember once having a really nice teacher and her being replaced by a really different version.
me.
You don't
It's
forget those kind of things. You just
it's the
don't.
worst, right? It makes a
Yes.
scar that doesn't heal. It's pretty rough.
Yes. Well, next up, we are so excited to introduce, well, not introduce, but to bring back and have Cecil Castellucci. We love when you are on our program. I'm not good at this. We have a Star Wars book from you today, which I feel like we've talked to you about many different projects that you're working on. And so we're very excited to hear about this one today. But um, I'm going to be organized and give your formal bio first. And I put my headset on because there's this fire truck going by. So Cecil Castellucci, not that she really needs an introduction, but she is the award-winning and New York Times best-selling author of books and graphic novels for young adults, including Shade, The Changing Girl, Boy Proof, The Plain Jane, Soupy Leaves Home, and many, many more books. In 2015, she co-authored Star Wars Moving Target, a Princess Leia adventure. She is currently writing Batgirl for DC Comics. Her short stories and short comics have been published in Strange Horizons, Tour.com, and many other anthologies. So you are very busy. We'd love to hear about all the things you're working on, and most importantly today, this hyperspace stories from the Star Wars collection. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I love being here. And hello, librarians. I love you. You're all the best. So I'm very excited to be back in the Star Wars world. I do my own creator-owned things, but it's always fun to play in someone else's playground. And Star Wars is one of my favorite universes to play around in. Star Wars Hyperspace Stories is actually a monthly comic that comes out on Dark Horse, and this Rebels and Resistance is the first sort of collection of 4 issues of Rebels and Resistance in our series. So the series is actually written by me, Amanda Diebert, and Michael Morrissey. And each one of us is tasked with writing 4 issues that take place during different timelines in the Star Wars universe, sort of standalone, small stories that take place. This is from Amanda Diebert's story, which is about Obi-Wan and Anakin, sort of Clone Wars time. So each story takes place in a different time in the Star Wars universe, and they're not coming out in chronological order. So you'll jump from the new trilogy to the old trilogy to maybe something from the Clone Wars or Rebels, and it jumps around. But there is one thread that Amanda, Michael, and me came up together that sort of ties all of these books together. It's kind of like, I can tell you all, it's spoiler, that it's kind of a Velveteen Rabbit kind of situation. There's a small Wookiee doll that is a sort of thread story that is running through every single issue. So from the High Republic to the end of the third, the sequels, that runs through. You can see the little doll is in the hand. Oh no, that's a child. But anyway, so the doll isn't there, but the doll is very important, and it kind of runs through and it ties together this whole series. So the hope is at the end of the series, when the 12 issues are all done, you would be able to put all the issues in the order of timeline, Star Wars timeline, and sort of see this little story of why this tiny little Wookiee stuffed animal is important to the greater good in the Star Wars universe. But one of the things that's really fun about this, so this, like I said, this one collects 4 stories, and the 4 stories that it collects are Obi-Wan and Anakin, Clone Wars era, and then written by Amanda Diebert, and then by me, there's Luke and Leia between Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, and then there's Poe and Finn that takes place between Rise, you know what movies I'm talking about. Sorry, I'm nervous. And then Rey and Chewbacca in a Life Day story. So so these stories, what's great about them is that there's like a flavor for whatever character is your favorite Star Wars character. There's like an an issue upcoming. This is the first collection. There'll be 2 more collections coming out in the new year. So the fun thing is that you get every single sort of character that you might love, like whether you're dark side or light side, and are able to find a character that you connect with. And they're standalone stories, so you don't really need to, keep reading to find out what happens here and there. And the whole point of the Velveteen Rabbit, kind of little rabbit, that is that the right one? Yeah, that's the right one, right? The doll that goes all the way through, or Edward Tulane. And so that's not even necessary for you to understand. You don't have to, that's like just a threaded story that goes through all of them. That's something that sort of unites our little series. The other thing that we all did is that this is really all ages. So it's really for any Star Wars fan. It's for littles all the way to adults who like Star Wars. So you can really hand it to anybody who's just like, I want a great Star Wars story that's kind of quick and easy read, fun. And as we know, what's so great with comics is that, even, emerging readers can look at the images and sort of understand and connect with their favorite characters. So it's a really fun series. It's been a pure joy to work on. And it's been great crafting this with Michael and Amanda. Yeah, that's basically it. It's Star Wars and it's awesome.
Agreed. It is Star Wars and it is awesome. And you're right, because I hate to admit it publicly, but I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan. But I really enjoyed this. And I am enough of one to know all of the references. And there's such the relationships in this little book are just really strong. And I think everything you do is great. And I think you did a great job with this.
Thank you. Yeah, I think one thing that that we all try to do, and I think actually anybody who's writing in the Star Wars universe, is that you want to like push the characters a little bit forward, sort of flesh them out even more than we already know them, and get to know these little moments. Like I got to do Luke and Leia, which is on the cover, and it's just a small mission that they get to do. Obviously, they don't know that, spoiler, they're brother and sister, and I'm assuming everyone here knows that, but if you don't, sorry. It's sort of, even though they don't know that they're brother and sister, it was a great opportunity to have them go on a little adventure by themselves and have a brother sister moment that they're sort of unaware of, and kind of add to their relationship. It was the same thing with Poe and Finn for me, and I think Amanda and Michael would say the same thing about their stories. It just gets to enhance all the characters that we love a little bit more.
Agreed. And I think it's great how you pass off chapters, but it also seems seamless. And it's a wonderful project. So thank you for being here today. It's always so fun to see you.
Yeah, you too.
So
thank you.
Yeah. See you soon.
Hello.
Hello. I'm pleased to introduce our next guest speaker. Based in Boulder, Colorado, Stephen Graham Jones is a New York Times best-selling author of nearly 30 novels, collections, novellas, and comic books, including Mongrels, The Only Good Indians, and My Heart is a Chainsaw. He's the recipient of multiple awards, including the Mark Twain American Voice and Literature Award, American Library Association's RUSA and Alex Awards, the Locus Award, 4 Bram Stoker Awards, and 3 Shirley Jackson Awards. And here today, he joins us to talk about Earthdivers, Volume 1, Kill Columbus, a time-hopping horror thriller collection. Congratulations and welcome, Stephen.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks all y'all for being here. I was watching Dennis present his book, looking at his shelves, and I was like, mine are so empty. But we just repainted these shelves, so all the books are in the other room while this is all drying, so the books don't stick. Earthdivers. Earthdivers is it's 2112. The ecosphere has collapsed. You know, all the everything is polluted, basically. Like we kind of, the trend continues that we are now on, I should say. And for native, I want to say survivors, but I mean, even today I call us survivors. Just for Indian people living in the Southwest, stumble upon a cave that has been revealed because the rivers have dried up, and below the level of the water where this river used to be, there's a cave that has not been seen for ever, probably. Turns out, if you go into that cave, carrying an like carrying whatever you're carrying, if you're carrying um, um, I don't know, FDR's favorite pen, if or whatever, then it takes you back to where that pen is from. And they figure this out, and they decide that they don't want the world to be trashed like it is. Who they indict for having trashed the world is America. I mean, which is a little bit of a simplification. I think the whole world is, responsible for the ecosphere. However, they think that the world has kind of followed America's lead in regards to taking care of things, not leaving their trash everywhere. So they think the way they can save the world is by stopping America from happening. And so they find a Christopher Columbus relic. They go back to 1492. One of them goes back. There's four of these people: Tad, Sash, Yellow Kid, and Emily. Of those four, Tad is a linguist. He speaks, I don't know, 8 or 9 languages, and he's the only one who can talk with people in 1492 on these ships. Even now, we're not sure what language Columbus spoke. In day-to-day life, he wrote in Latin. He, being a sailor at the time, he knew a lot of the common seafaring languages. Tad knows all of these, so he goes back, fakes his way onto the one of the 3 ships, and his job is to stop Columbus from reaching the Americas, from opening that door. And the problem with that is that he is not a killer. He's not a soldier. I'm not saying soldiers are killers, but his job is basically to kill Columbus. And his wife is a soldier. She would have been so much better fitted for this. She's got tactical operations in her head. Tad, he's got languages in his head. So he has to figure out how to navigate 1492 and how to navigate the ethical quandary of having to kill people. And that's Kill Columbus. That's Earthdivers, Kill Columbus. The reason it's called Earthdivers is when I originally sold this comic, I sold it as the Age of Discovery because it was Christopher Columbus. But then, working with the editors at IDW, we kicked up, we kind of followed out where the story would go after Columbus. And it turns out it left the Age of Discovery and went to some other places. It went to the Ice Age. It went to what we call the Old West. It went to 1776, and it's going other places as well. So I had to come up with a different title. And, I'd been calling this in my head Age of Discovery for a while, so I didn't have any idea what to do. Cast about for a couple of weeks. And finally, my wife was like doing her hair or something, and I went and told her, I can't figure out the title of this. And she said, well, tell me what it's about. So I told her what it's about. And she said, sounds like you're telling an origin story. Are there any origin stories that have, phrases you can use? And of course, I immediately landed on Earthdivers, the origin story that a lot of peoples of North America still have about how the world was created. And how that is Sky Woman, or some divine figure, deity, trickster, was in a world of water and wanted a place to live, to be. So he or she sends down a series of animals to get a handful of mud from the bottom under all that water to bring back up to the surface that person can use to make a continent. And that's what these Earthdivers, that's what Tad and Sash and Yellow Kid and Emily are trying to do. They're trying to dive down into time and bring up a handful of mud to make a new world that they can live in. So I was, quite pleased to be married to someone smarter than I am. As for where Earthdivers comes from, I think it really comes from me sitting in the back of fourth grade history, listening to the teacher talk about how amazing Christopher Columbus was. And I'm back there thinking, well, I mean, amazing. The dude did a lot of bad stuff to me and my people. And I think that just festered, not just in me, but I think it like festers in like the hearts, the guts, the heads of all Native people, in the Americas. We all like it feels like it's quite cathartic to go back in time and cut Christopher Columbus's throat. I didn't realize that. People always talk about how fiction is cathartic, and like I mean I understand it, but I don't know if I've really understood it until I got to go back in time and kill Columbus. It feels really, really good. I think I'm tempted to make this into a time loop where I just get to do it over and over and over again. That'd be really fun. But that's Earthdivers, and the first arc, which is in that trade, is out in September. The first 6 issues, the 1492 arc, the Kill Columbus arc. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen. In your introduction, you point out that there's 1,000 kids sitting in the back of the history classroom. Such a powerful reference to that time being in the classroom. Really, congratulations on the publication of this book. Just wondering, since it is really a village that created this beautiful book, if you could talk a little bit about what it was like to work with David, Jean-Felice, Joanna Lafluente, Steve Wands, and Raphael Albuquerque.
Oh man, they've all been so amazing. They they make me look a lot better than I am. I mean, there's a reason it says created by me and Davide, because his art brings it alive in ways that I never would have suspected. And just his thumbnails, when we were dreaming up how these characters are going to look, his thumbnails completely made the story different. The way he did Tad's hair, the way he drew Columbus, that regal pose he has and everything. It's been amazing. And then Joanna comes in and she colors it with and she colors it with these like tones that are particular to each era, I guess. Tone is probably the wrong word, but I think palette is the word I'm supposed to use. I'm not a colorist, and it's cool how she can distinguish things like that. And then Steve, the letterer, he is endlessly patient with me because I am making changes up until like the last microsecond before it goes into the print wheel, and he he just makes it all work. And then Raphael Albuquerque on those covers, he gave it that iconic cover that's up there now, which is amazing. I've been, studying his art for years and years, so it's really cool to have him on a project I'm working on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Earthdivers is coming out in September.
It's really great. And honestly, that cover is one of the most striking things I've ever seen. So, hi, Amy. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good. So last up, we are so excited you're the last author on our panel. We are so happy that you're with us today. Amy Chu is a writer for comics and TV, currently with the Netflix anime series Dota, Dragon's Blood. And if you haven't seen that or watch the trailer, you will be sucked in immediately. It's such a powerful creation. Her comic works include an acclaimed run on Red Sonja for DC and Marvel. She's written stories for Wonder Woman, Poison Ivy, Deadpool, Ant-Man, and Iron Man. Just a few. For young readers, she has written the graphic novel Sea Sirens and Sky Island, and Anna and the Cosmic Race. We are always so thrilled to talk to graphic novel creators. All of you always have this background and this extensive collection of things that you work on. So when you have something so special like your newest book, oh, I'm so bad at that, Carmilla, we just love for you to be able to talk about it for a little bit and tell us about the process and about the book a little bit. And thank you again for being here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's always exciting. And I see a few people I know in the audience out there. Shout out to my Pokemon Go friends. You know who you are. So Carmilla is a very special book. It's Sea Sirens, which is also available through Penguin Random House, it is more of a kid's book, whereas Carmilla is like, I don't want to say it's my first foray, but it is definitely a very mature. It's mature. It's the HBO Max. Oh, I guess it's no longer HBO, is it? Story, and it's a vampire murder mystery. I'll talk a little bit about process too, because this is kind of unique, and also very personal. It is the story of a Chinese American social worker who, frustrated, starts investigating into a series of runaway teens' deaths, all queer young women around her neighborhood of Chinatown. And this is also set in 1996, so you know, a grittier time for New York City. There's also very special in terms of how this book came about, because some of you are already very well familiar with Carmilla for sure, but Carmilla being the predecessor to Dracula by something like 26 years. So Dracula is in fact based off of Carmilla, yet we all know the Dracula story, and the majority of the American public or the world know a lot less that it was based on a very queer story. If you read the original Carmilla, it's, you know, this is a somewhat predatory love story of a queer vampire who essentially kills or turns her victims, right? And so I thought that in itself was super interesting. And of course, spoiler, right? If you read the original, you know that she dies in the end, because how can you have such a vampire running around? So when I got, this is basically for the Dark Horse imprint Berger books, and some of you are familiar with Karen Berger, who created the Vertigo line for DC and really brought a lot of us into the world of comics. When I say a lot of us, non-superhero, largely female, drove the growth of that category. And so, of course, having lunch with Karen in San Diego Comic-Con, she asked, what do I got? And I'm like, I just threw out this little tidbit. It's like, did you know about Carmilla? And she had actually not. I'm like, well, this is an opportunity. She got very excited. And so here's I don't want to say it's the twist, right? Is that my thinking is that if I were Carmilla, first of all, I'm not going to be off like that, right? If you were Carmilla, what would you do? Obviously, Europe is very hostile to you. I would go to New York. I would go to New York and set up shop there. So this is really the story, not from Carmilla's perspective, but from Athena, the social worker's perspective of uncovering this mystery. And there's a definite Chinese American bent to it. You're going to get a lot of Chinese American history in here, just because I can, and it's important to the story. There's an intergenerational not theme. What am I trying to say? Another layer of Athena's relationship with her grandfather, who doesn't actually tell her everything she needs to know. So of course, there's another layer, a twist of that. But the most important thing I also wanted to sort of, when Stephen was talking about cathartic, it's not just the fact that, you know, this is a very queer story, but it's also a very much of what am I trying to say here? There's a little bit of personal history here too for me, in terms of how when we're immigrants coming to the US, frequently our families lie to us about our origins. So there's an uncovering of a mystery, not just for vampires, but also her origin story. So there's a lot of that going on. But the other element of the catharsis is too that we're such a multi-ethnic society. It just frustrates me that when we talk about vampires, there are vampires in almost every culture. But when we talk about vampires as a genre, it's almost always the European, very male-centric Dracula, Nosferatu. And so I try to, you know, address that a bit too, by talking about the diversity in supernatural. So there's a long history of the Guernsey, the Jiangxi, but in Cantonese it's Guernsey, of the sort of Chinese, they're vampires slash zombies. So some of you may be already familiar with that a little bit, but there's obviously an element of that going on in this story. I hope I didn't go on too long, but it is been a very exciting ride. Sue Lee, who did the cover and of course everything in the book, has been wonderful to work with, and just the ability to work with legendary editor like Karen. I hope you all enjoy it. If you haven't read it, I'm just so pleased with how it's turned out and how well it's been received. Just about every store I've talked to, for people who've been buying it, have sold out multiple times. So oh, thank you. I'm so excited to sharing this with you. And it's just a beautiful book, I think, overall. And it's dark. It's the darkest thing I've written. It is, I've been told it is the most vertigo book of the Burger Books slate.
That's a good way to describe it. It's a beautiful book on so many levels. And you're like terrified one moment, but you're also, there's so much heart in it. There's such a love underneath it all. Then there's also the relationship with the grandfather. So there's that cultural aspect. It really has a little bit of everything. It is really, really stunning. I can't say enough about it myself. And I'm a wimp, but I still really liked it a lot. So we'd love to bring all of our wonderful panelists back on the screen. That was a great program. And like I said, all of the books were so different, but as you can see, there's something for every reader. And that's what we are kind of hoping today, because we have librarians, and patrons, but mostly librarians on the call that do the selecting for all their different readers. And they love, helps them with not only their own personal reading lists, but their readers advisory. So we think it's imperative to have a book for everybody on the list. Maybe if before we wrap up, if maybe you guys can just give us a graphic novel that you're reading, or something that continues to inspire you while you're writing. That would be a great way for us to maybe end the program. We could start with you, Amy, if you'd like.
Oh, okay. I had just finished Third State, and that's just like an amazing book and a graphic novel. And I'm blanking on the author right now, but I'm sure many of you have it on your shelves, and that's just been really inspiring in terms of, I guess, emotion, right? And just telling a really great autobiographical story.
Great. And what about you, Cecil?
You know what? I have it up on dock next. It's Superman: Harvest of Youth by Sina Grace, which is coming out this fall. I think it's coming out in October. And I'm really excited about his take on Superman. It's part of their young adult line. So
great. And Dennis?
Just kind of started rereading the hardcover reissue of Full Metal Alchemist, which is a manga from years ago, but I just love the fantastical quality of it, but also it's grounded with this kind of the big brother, little brother, the little brother who's this giant iron dude. Yeah, I mean, it's just so well done. I keep going back to that thing.
Great. And Stephen?
Right now, I guess the current comic I'm reading is Jeff Lemire's Phantom Road, just issue by issue. It's really Jeff Lemire. He always brings it. And I'm also reading the Miracle Man Omnibus, which is like nearly 800 pages of Miracle Man. And I've never read Miracle Man somehow, and it's just blowing my mind. It's like a ramp up to Watchmen. It's completely compelling. I think it would circulate well in libraries too. It's a big old thing. Lots of room on that spine for a sticker.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and also I just want to say before hanging up that we, of course, appreciate your time so much. And also, I just can never, every time we do a graphic novel panel, I need to point out how incredible I find the coordination and the collaboration between the colorists and the writers and the illustrators. And all of your books are so different, and all are absolutely stunning. And I just, maybe if anybody wants to just wrap up on talking about the process that graphic novel creators go through, because I know as an author, of regular prose books, they're working on it mostly by themselves, but you get all this input the whole time. And I just wonder, if you might want to just comment on that really quickly. We could do in the same order if you have anything to say, and if you don't, you don't have to.
Well, I'll say a little bit. It's it is fascinating because it is fascinating. It's this is why I love comics. I never wrote prose. I love working as a team. I love working with the editor and the artist, and it just makes me feel um, what you get is larger than the sum of all parts. What am I trying to say? You know what I mean? It's that to me is the magic of it. I'm sure it's a headache for the editor. I work with editors who haven't done a graphic novel before, and it is different. And you have to respect within comics, frequently, it's not that I am the creator or Cecil's the creator and the artist is the illustrator, they're co-authors. And I see that oftentimes. Please, please, please always recognize that we are co-authoring this book with the artist. If the artist isn't the one writing, they're the ones working, we're working on it together. So I really hope there's some change in terms of how the artists are acknowledged on graphic novels, because it's very, very important. They're the ones who interpret the script and bring it to the full glory of what you see.
Just echoing what Amy and Stephen also said, that it really, comics is a team sport. You can't do it by yourself. In the Star Wars book, it's many different artists that are doing each issue and stuff. But one of the fabulous things about writing comics is that it's a real lesson in how to tell a great story, because you come up as a writer with the scaffolding of like what the script is and stuff like that, and then you have to learn how to let go and to allow the expert that is the artist to do their thing. And that marriage, I mean, comics is a visual medium, and so you can't tell that story without it. And one of the most beautiful things about comics writing, as opposed to prose writing, which I have written a lot of, is there's and I'm sure maybe Stephen would agree, like there's a silence in comics, a rest and a pause that you can't get in any other kind of reading. So that's what the brilliant thing is about that collaboration between writer and artists.
Yeah. Dennis or Stephen, did you want to add anything? If not,
I'll just say that, like, I mean, I found comics as kind of a way out. I was kind of different, and I was like in my own little black box trying to figure out what to do. But in my day job, I do sometimes storyboard for animation, and I just felt like it's so structured and there's so much outline involved that I felt free a little bit to kind of jump off a cliff and experiment and try things. So I kind of felt it as pretty liberating and joy to get into, in a kind of way out of a creative block.
Yeah, and Cecil's right about that. The quality of the silence in a panel in a comic book is completely different than what you can do in prose fiction. And I think it's different than what you can do in cinema or TV as well. Comics really have a different, I don't know, it's just a different quality of silence, which is amazing. And yeah, there's good magic and bad magic. Like the good magic for me about it being a team sport, like y'all are saying, is that my editor keeps me from messing up, or she fixes my mess ups, or she tells me to fix my mess ups because I'm doing a time travel story, but I don't write with plans and I don't pay attention to what I'm doing, and you kind of have to with the time travel thing, And so she tells me you can't do this because it time travel is all wrapped back on itself, the grandfather paradox and all that. So my editor Maggie Howell, she keeps Maggie keeps me straight. Anyways, the bad magic to me is publishing issue by issue, month by month. I'll figure out in issue 5, I should have done something in issue 2 to make issue 6 work, but I can't go back to issue 2 to fix it, which that's a weird sort of like, it's permanent. I have to figure out what to do in issue 6 in a different way now, which when I started out writing comics, my friend Daniel Krause said, he had just done the autumnal, which I think it went 9 issues. He said he just wrote them all at once so he could go back and fix it. And I was like, oh, that's what you do. But I didn't do that. I knew the right thing to do, and I still did it month by month. And so I learned my lesson about that.
I will say, Stephen, I am always intimidated by the time travel. I could never write it. I think it's fascinating when people do, but I can't even keep straight what's happening now, let alone reorganize the
Yeah.
past. So
It's kind of, you know, time travel kind of becomes a choose your own adventure where you got your finger in like 8
yeah.
places in the book trying to track what's going on, you know?
Well, what a fun panel. What a great day. We thank you all so much for being here today. And I really do always appreciate the graphic novel panels because of all the different levels that creativity that go into one issue. It just makes the conversation so much more interesting. So thank you all so much for being here today. And if anybody has, last minute questions for the authors that you didn't get a chance to ask, we are happy to pass them along after today. But thank you. Thank you all of our West Coasters for getting up so early. Now you can go have breakfast. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just the last thing we want to say is thank you all so much for coming. Miriam, thank you for being a gracious co-host as always. Charnel is in the background. Unbelievable that you just sorted all those background people out so seamlessly. It's a lot more tricky than it looks on the front side. So thank you all so much for joining us today. We have further reading slides for you. We have an Edelweiss collection here you can see. Miriam, I don't know if you want to point out any of these titles, but again, we also will be sending all this in the wrap-up report, and we hope you checked out the online hub. But Miriam, if there's anything on the slide you really want to point out, go for it.
Okay, great. There are certainly some recommended comics, graphic novel, and manga titles on this slide, including Attack on Titan, Berserk, the sweet, spicy rom-com My Dress Up Darling. There's the modern fantasy boys love trilogy, Guardian. Also among the featured titles in the collection are Stan Lee's Fantastic Four, which is from Penguin Classic Marvel Collection. We have the Eisner Award-winning Lore Olympus, as well as Trevor Noah and Christopher Myers' Into the Uncut Grass, in addition to manga-inspired coloring cookbook and a number of books for gamers. Thank you again for joining us today, and we're deeply appreciative of your support of our books, authors, and titles.
Yes, and don't forget to join when you are in that online hub of resources, don't forget to enter the 2 raffles that we have in there as well. Thank you. Another successful LibraryCon. We're happy you joined us. I'm sure we'll see you again before then, but if not, we will be back next summer with our next installment of LibraryCon Live. Thank you so much. That was so fun. Have a great day, everybody.